Hello and welcome, DPL fans. We are back once again. It's been a while for a DPL video, but here we are. I'm going to go over all of my ORAS games in this most recent DPL, Season 8. So this is my team. Obviously, shoutouts to everyone for helping me, and yeah, you get the idea. Let's just jump right into it, because this is going to be a longer video. Right, Week 1. We are against Professor Chipboard. Real quick, I'm just going to go over this draft that we have. So basically, this is Manaphy plus Double Healing Wish, plus Lopunny Spikes. Like, those are the main, and then Lopunny plus Pursuit is also a good synergy. So there's like some pretty good offensive synergy between these top 5. Latias is a really good Scarfer. Crook is a really good Scarfer, so there's good options there. Steelix is a good budget steel, secondary ground type, gets upper rocks for when Crook wants to be Scarf or something like that, or offensive. Eel is a nice ground resist, because only Latias checking ground types is pretty rough, so we have 2 more levitators in the back. Misdreavus is a great spin blocker with Roserade, and yeah, overall this team does have quite a bit of synergy together. I do think it's actually quite decent overall. It uses some lesser used picks like Mega Lopunny and Manaphy in this team, and then Latias as well, also slept on. Yeah, so this is the team, one of the teams that we drafted in ORAS, and we're up against Professor Chipboard Week 1. He has Landotee, Zapdos, Scizor, another Mega Lopunny, so he was able to wait quite a bit on his. So I think the power level of these teams, there's definitely some higher quality mons on his side, but I feel like they have a little bit less synergy, as I've explained, so we'll see how I decided to approach this matchup. Now, I looked at it, and Manaphy is like really great this matchup. The only things faster being Lopunny and Sneasel, and I don't expect the Zapdos to be max speed, and I don't expect the Tentis to be max speed in this matchup. So, the main problem is Manaphy can't really fit Tail Glow in this matchup, which is why I am Expert Belt for attacks. The Expert Belt allows my Psychic to 2-hit KO likely Tentacruel spreads. Energy Ball will kill Seismitoad from full. Ice Beam will 2-hit KO the Quilladin, and HP Fire I believe I have. No, I don't have HP Fire. So yeah, I did need a lot of coverage versus team, so I wasn't able to fit everything. HP Fire for Scizor would be nice, but then I'm slower than max speed Zapdos in theory, so I didn't really want to do that anyways. So yeah, this is my main offensive threat. Mega Lopunny is Healing Wish here, just to support the Manaphy, because I do expect it to take a big hit and trade out early, and then I want to bring it back. So that's the whole idea behind these top 2 the top 2. Encore is there, mainly for Zapdos, Roost, Quilladin, Synthesis, stuff like that. If I'm able to catch Lando on a Stealth Rock, I can threaten U-turn, or I can threaten Encore and force him to switch out. Stuff like that. So Encore is a nice bring here. Crook, what was my Crook? It was Scarf. So Intimidate Scarf. I maybe could have been Moxie, but Intimidate was nice for the Scizor priority, as well as Landotee. Like, Landotee is a pretty big threat to my team, so having the Intimidate there is pretty nice. Yes, I remember this, a lot of the mocks in this week were kind of like Manaphy setting up a Crook endgame, so that's what I really tried to do in the actual game as well. Latias being max defense helmet. Initially I was like a faster Latias, but just by going max bold, I'm able to take 2 returns from Mega Lopunny after rocks, which is like a huge breaking point, right? Because in a lot of mocks I was getting destroyed by Mega Lopunny on his team, which is why obviously I have 3 helmet mons. Like, obviously there's no surprise there. Lopunny is a pretty big threat to my team, because while this team does have really nice offensive synergy, defensively it is a little bit frailer. It's not exactly like gonna fall over to everything, but something like a Mega Lopunny with unresisted stabs, it is going to 2-hit KO pretty much the whole roster outside of max defense Latias, which is like a super extreme set that I didn't really want to bring, but I felt forced to. HP Fire and Psychic is pretty good coverage here. I feel like I could really work towards a win on this Latias, potentially in the late game with Calm Mind, Roost, and just being so bulky. And then my Rose Raid is also Helmet, but it is modest max HP with spikes. So this is going to be my lead. Basically, I'm able to get spikes and force his Seismitoad out, which is most likely Rocker. I expect the Lano to be Scarf here almost 100%. So being able to force out the Rocker turn 1 as well as threaten the Quilladin, right? Because I am Technician HP Fire. So being able to threaten that means I do get a hazard lead initially in most situations, so that's very nice. And then Electros is some defense, some Spadef, Impish Nature, Rocky Helmet, Coil, Dragon Tail. So this is another win condition, as well as just general Rocky Helmet chip on things. It can switch it on Lando, Scizor. The special defense is for Zapdos Heat Wave from Timid. Timid max special attack. I can always avoid the 3-hit KO with that, even without leftovers, since I am Rocky Helmet. So that's what the EVs are for. Sneasel was also a pretty decent offensive threat. Defensively it's terrible, obviously, it's a Sneasel, but it does have a really nice speed tier into me and hits most of my guys super effectively with the combination of Knockoff, Icicle Crash, and Low Kick. So that's not very good for me, but you know, what can you do? That's my team. Let's get into the battle. And wow, overlay, so cool. As I said, I'm going to lead with my Rose Raid. Zapdos leads off, and I'm just going to take this as a Spikes, or am I going to Sludge Bomb? I'm going to Sludge Bomb. So into Zapdos, I figured I can Sludge Bomb and then Spike, potentially. The reason why I would want to do it in this order is because Chip on the Zapdos is very important for my Lopunny and for my Manaphy. My Manaphy not being Tail Glow means I don't want it to be checked by Zapdos necessarily. I want him to have to go into Scarf Lando and like U-turn, take Chip on something else to get me in range of Lopunny or something like that. So getting Chip on Zapdos is really important for that, as well as for my Scarf Rook, as well as for my Lopunny. So like all these things appreciate Chip on Zapdos. He reveals Signal Beam, which is interesting. I wasn't expecting Signal Beam. I was expecting like a Heat Wave or something to come out this turn, but if I can preserve my Rose at 72, I'm going to. So I'm going to go into Latias here. Even though Signal Beam is super effective against me, it only does like 40 something percent. So I'm really fine just sitting on this and Calm Minding. I can use this as Calm Mind fodder. And I do have Rocky Helmet max defense, so even Scizor U-turn would not be able to take me out. And I'm able to trade the HP Fire into the Occaberry, which I know is coming. Almost certainly for a fact, because Latias is just too big of a threat offensively for you to not be Aqua Scizor or Scarf Scizor. So I figured it's Aqua Scizor and Scarf Lando, just most likely, but I did see Scarf Scizor in a few mocks. Anyways, he Heat Waves my Latias and immediately burns me, which is, it really throws a wrench in my plan, right? Because now Signal Beam plus Burn is a 2-hit KO, and he's faster than me. He didn't know this initially, so he just goes for a Roost as I go for a Psychic. But now I can't really stay in. I have to go Manaphy here. Like, I have to take Chip on my most important piece, and Expert Belt Ice Beam is able to knock this out because he did reveal Modest when he attacked into my Rosary with Signal Beam, so I did know it was Modest. That's kind of why I expected my Latias to be faster, but it was still slower, just max defense Latias moment. But now the Lopunny comes in. I do have a Rose Raid sack. I really could have been Poison Point here. I had it for a long time in mocks, but then Quilladin just existing, being able to spike up against non-technician HP Fire, it does like 30 something percent, 40% max, something like that. And I really wasn't comfortable going into that because Bulletproof blocks my Sludge Bomb, so I'm really relying on HP Fire to hit that thing, so I did want Technician for that reason. I still get decent Helmet Chip because I live the HJK. Now this Lopunny is at 2/3 HP. I go to my Crook, very obvious Scarf, very obvious forcing him out, so I'm going to get at my Rocks here. And yeah, so he's going to trade Rocks, but this gets my Manaphy in for a Energy Ball. But I don't click Energy Ball because I know he's going to fear that, so I go for Psychic on the switch to Tentacruel. Because if you look at his team, he has no other play, right? What else is coming in on the Manaphy and threatening it out? Scizor? I don't think so. Lando? No, bro. Is Lopunny coming in after rocks at 67? I don't think so either. And if it did, it would have gotten killed by Psychic. So I know Tentacruel is like the only play that makes sense, so I'm going to Psychic on the switch. And thanks to the Expert build, I'm able to just barely 2-hit KO his spread. And this is really important because no spin means rocks stay up for the rest of the game. And now Mega Lopunny comes in. I stay in on HJK and I die. Now this was a very measured risk, alright? So the Lopunny in the Lopunny mirror, I expect to be Jolly, right? And Jolly does not kill me most of the time. It's a very big roll in my favor. So I figured if I can live the HJK, I also have the mischance, and I go for a Psychic, I kill the Lopunny. I do have a Healing Wish Lopunny of my own in the back. I can bring back my Manaphy and essentially solo the team. Because Ice Beam, Energy Ball, 2 Surfs. It's like a really impossible situation to put him in. So if I am able to get this play, or get this roll, then that's hella nice for me. He did reveal after the game that he's actually adamant Lopunny, so this whole thought process doesn't really work. But in theory, I think it's a sound play. Either way, it just didn't work out. So a little bit unlucky on that. My Crook comes in to revenge, and at this point I do kind of feel like I have to superpower. As he reveals max defense helmet on his Seismitoad, likely just for my Lopunny, but also works out here in this case. I go to my Electros because I do kind of wall the Seismitoad. I get another helmet chip off, but the knockoff is unfortunate because I really would have loved that helmet to chip the Lopunny further. But here I go for a Coil, and judging from the Lopunny coming in, I figured it's probably going to be Encore, but at this point it's like kind of a tough play to make, right? Because if he is not Encore, just goes for an HJK as I go into my Crocodile, I will lose on the spot, so that's really unlucky. And my Latias is burned, so I can't really roost up on this thing. It's just going to return, kill me after rocks and burn. So like, I don't really have a safe switch here, which is why I just stay in even knowing Encore is coming. In hindsight, I probably should have swapped to Crook because that's my only out really of making progress, is I'm going for Encore on the switch out. But yeah, here I'm just going to coil a few more times just to force the second Encore to come out, because at this point he really can't risk me resting. So like Encore is like very forced at the expense of some HP on my eel. So this gives me the safe switch out into Crocodile, and I'm able to force him out with a superpower. Now Seismitoad is getting pretty weak, but the helmet is also wearing down on my Crook, so unlucky. He does pivot into Lando, very smart play. He knows I'm Scarf and -1. This isn't going to do anything, and then Lando can get a free U-turn off. And I don't really have much for this. I have to sack my Electros. Alright. So now Lopunny comes in. At this point, I can go into my Crocodile, go for another Superpower. I don't actually have Earthquake on this set. I am Knockoff and Superpower and what else was it? Stone Edge for Zapdos. So I am kind of forced to keep taking these helmets, which is really unfortunate, but what can you do? Here, Lando comes in. I know U-turn's coming. I don't have a play other than sacking HP of my Lopunny. And here, it's a Lopunny mirror, but I do have Fake out here. I go for it. He's faster, obviously, because of ORAS speed mechanics, but because I know he's adamant, just from damage rolls here versus the Electros, right? Able to figure that out. I'm actually capping totally. I thought it was Jolly the whole time, but I'm like, let's go for a speed tie, bring back my Latias. My only hope right now is hoping that it is not Akaberry on the Scizor, but obviously it is Akaberry, and even then it wouldn't have killed. But yeah. So I'm actually just gonna lose to the Scizor here. So yeah. And then I say in the chat it was an 18% roll on my Manaphy, but he says he was adamant, so yeah. And I think the play probably was worth the risk, judging from the information that I knew at the time. I didn't really have a great play otherwise, right? What was I switching into Lopunny, just sacking Mons left and right? I figured if my Manaphy can live 82% of the time, I'm gonna go for that. Stop the bleeding from the Lopunny. So it just didn't go our way in this game, but I think this was like really well played by him, so losing to someone who's playing really well, it's not the end of the world, right? Right. Let's go into the next matchup. This is versus Sablo. And this is our other draft, so I'm going to go over this draft as well real quick. So we were blessed to get a Mega Gardevoir in this slot. So we have Mega Gardevoir. I went with Serperior as like a decent speed option, a Wincon, a good Scarfer, you know, Glare support for Gardevoir. There's some nice synergies there. I can also screen up potentially into Gardevoir, because Gardevoir with a Reflect Up is honestly quite hard to take down, in some cases. The natural Spadef is so great. Crocodile, again, we have both Crocodiles and ORAS, so kind of have a monopoly on that. It's just a good mon, a great Scarfer, another Pursuit Trapper, because bulky Psychics do tend to like coming in on guard. Like for example, Mesprit could be Spadef here with like Citrus Berry. We saw that a lot in mocks to check the Gardevoir. It's able to switch it on Hyper Voice pretty comfortably, and then threaten me out with potential Iron Tail, get up rocks, that sort of thing, T-Wave, anything like that. Crook here is also like a great offensive option because the team outside of Crook really lacks physical offense. We do have Bouffalant later, but that's more of a fringe pick. You're not bringing that every week. And then Crobat is kind of forced into a support role in this team, unfortunately. We'll go over that in a sec. So Crook is a nice fit here. It's also a good offensive rocker. I'm not going to bring Registeel every week. I will bring it a lot, but not every week. Then Crobat, unfortunately, because we have no grounded poison, is going to be relegated to defog duty most matchups because a lot of teams in ORAS are packing T-Spikes these days, and having all of my top 3 guys hit by T-Spikes is pretty annoying. So it is going to run defog a lot in this this DPL run, but that's okay. I figure Crobat with Super Fang, Taunt, defog, whatever I want to bring on that particular matchup, it is still a great mon, So I'm not too worried about not really able to run Band as easily, or like Nasty Plot. Those sets are like really not its best sets anyways. They do have like pretty high ceilings, but it's very rare for them to actually come to a game. So we have support Crobat basically is what we drafted, and then we have Rotom Wash at round 5. This was a pretty big surprise that it was still on the board. This is mostly due to price increases over the season, so Rotom is actually quite expensive these days, but for that reason it's around round 5 and I'm able to pick it up with this top 4, and all of a sudden this team is starting to look really great. Rotom actually covers quite a few weaknesses of the team. For example, a Fire Resist, I desperately needed one. A Water Resist besides Serp is great. Ground Resist besides Crobat, so I have 2 Ground Resists, and Momentum into Gardevoir. You couldn't ask for a better mon on this kind of build, so that's great. We have a Will-O-Wisp user, so being able to spread Burn in ORAS is very powerful. And then Registeel rounds out the top 6. It's just a nice defensive steal. One of the more consistent steals in ORAS, just to its natural bulk. It's able to check things like the Gardevoir, the Mega Altaria, stuff like that. It's just so naturally bulky, it can get rocks up very easily. It is a little bit of taunt bait, but the rest of my team really deals with taunt quite well, so I'm not too worried about that. It also gives me a nice toxic user. A lot of these guys don't really run toxic that much. Rotom can, but usually prefers Wisp and ORAS. And then the rest of these guys usually just hit stuff. Crobat can run toxic. I did run that quite a few times, but this gives you a nice setup threat, like deterrent. Like they probably have to bring taunt on a lot of guys to prevent toxic from just wearing down something super fast. Also can use T-Wave, which is great support for my Mega Guard again. So I have like 3 T-Wave users, well 2 T-Wave and a Glare. And then Mega Gardevoir can take advantage of a paired team pretty well. So that was the idea behind Registeel. Bouffalant is just there because I needed another physical attacker, and this is the best one for cheap. It's able to like have a pretty good natural bulk, check a lot of things naturally, as well as just hit hard. Swords Dance sets are great. Sap Sipper is great in the Serp Mirror, because I don't really want my Crobat getting glared. And then Illumise. I don't think I brought this a single time, so in theory it's nice, right? Prankster T-Wave, Prankster Encore, slow U-turn into guard. It's like 1 point option. It was probably the best fit for the team, but I didn't end up bringing it because the other 7 are all quite bringable, pretty flexible in most matchups. So I never really had an option where I only had 5 good mons and then Illumise was the best remainder. Yeah, but anyways, this matchup, right? Sablo has round 1 Gren, a classic from him. He's done that since, 2018 in LD, 2017. He picked up round 1 Gren and won the league. So I remember that way back in the day. He was the first to like really highly rate Gren. So he was ahead of his time in that sense. Lando I, pretty good offensive threat, but I do have Crobat and Spadef Rotom Wash in this game. Mesprit likely going to be Spadef Citrus Berry, like I said. Mega Altaria, definitely the biggest threat to my team. And Empoleon, right? Empoleon can kind of check the guard, but it is kind of weak to Serp, Crook, Rotom. Like, the only thing it does is stop guard and Crobat, really, this matchup. As well, it can trade rocks versus Registeel, but you know. Then Hitmontop is not a real Pokemon, I really feel, this matchup. Like if you're bringing Hitmontop, what are you doing? It's okay into Bouffalot and Crocodile, but it really gets smashed by everything else. It's okay into Registeel as well, I guess, but getting smashed by like 4 Pokemon that I'm definitely bringing is really rough. Then Scolipede, I have definitely lost quite a few mocks to SD Scolipede, mostly because I kept getting flinched by a Rock Slide, so that was tough, but I figured I'm not going to get flinched in the actual game. I was Charty Berry on my Crobat for this reason, and then Gofagrigus, I didn't really feel like was coming to this game. Look at my prep real quick. So I do have Mega Gardevoir, pretty bulky, Modest with 16 special attack gets me all the special attack I need. Thunderbolt, Wish Protect, Thunderbolt for the Empoleon. Then I have Kiwi Berry, Serperior. This is able to check a Rock Polish, Lando Eye if it is able to get through my Rotom Wash, which it can kind of force it with Calm Mind bulky sets. So I did want something something faster, and also can check Rock Polish with Kiwi Berry. So if it's Calm Mind, Serperior can Leaf Storm, get +2, take 1, and then Leaf Storm again to pick up the KO, or HP Ice if that's if I need a little bit more power versus that single turn. I can also Glare it if I need to, you know, stuff like that. So yeah, Crobat, Max Attack, Charty Berry. The idea with Max Attack Crobat, I initially had Choice Band in this matchup. The idea was the only flying resist is Empoleon, which if he uses Empoleon for Crobat, then all of a sudden my guard is freed up, and vice versa. The opposite is also true. If he uses Empoleon for guard, then Crobat is free. But I felt like I really needed the defog in this matchup, because if you look at it, Gren can T-Spike, Scully can T-Spike and Spike, so being hazard stacked like that is not something that I want to happen, so I did end up being defog. I was Sharp Beak for a while to maintain the offensive power, but Charty Berry was actually pretty impactful in the Scolipede end games, so I decided to go with that. Then pretty standard Spadef, Rotom Wash, nothing really to say here other than I do have Discharge over a status move, which is more standard. The reason for this is it deters the Altaria from wanting to come in so freely. T-Wave would also kind of do that, but Discharge also allows me to stay in on the Empoleon, because nothing else really wants to take a Scald outside of the Rotom Wash. So being able to stay in and just chunk that thing is really nice. As well as Discharge does a little bit more to the Gren. It's able to pick it up after rocks, I believe, or at least get very close, right? And then the Parachance is just nice in general to spread. It is ORAS after all. Then Pace Split to keep me healthy, like very standard Rotom set. Registeel also pretty standard. I am physically defensive, and the reason for this is because DD, Altaria, and Scolipede are pretty big threats. So I did want physically defensive Registeel to take those on. Obviously the Altaria could be special, but I feel like DD is more likely versus my team, or at least mixed, right? So T-Wave and Iron Head is a pretty solid way to beat that. Iron Head is not going to 2-hit KO most Altaria spreads, but with T-Wave and flinch chances, I am able to 1v1 it almost every time. So it's super fine. And then Seismic Toss is just for consistent damage, and rocks obviously. Then I brought Banded Crocodile. This is a great it's a great lead, honestly, and it's a great breaker, because Gardevoir does have some roadblocks, Serperior does have some roadblocks, but Crook does not. If you look at this team, Banded, it is able to 2-hit KO the entire roster outside of maybe Max Defense Hitmonchan, which I don't expect to come in the first place. So yeah, I'm able to deter rocks from lead Mesprit if I lead with Crook. If he tries to stay in and just trade rocks, he will just die, because I do expect Citrus Berry on this thing. It could be Colbur, but I do expect Citrus. He does have to respect Scarf at least on lead, so there's that. And then my bulk with my special defense is to always take a Life Orb Earth Power from Landorus. So I am Pursuit as well, if I'm able to pursuit the Mesprit, if I feel like it's going to switch out, then Guard of War is now one less Pokemon that can switch into Hyper Voice. And yeah, it's just a nice breaker, able to always one-shot Empoleon, which is super nice, and then Cofagrigus as well. And also, if I'm just clicking knockoff, it's really hard for him to set up meaningfully into me. Obviously, Altaria can set up on me if I'm locked into knockoff, but the thing with Altaria is that I have a Registeel and a Crobat, so it's not like the end of the world if it gets a DD up. Mostly preventing the Scolipede free SD is what I want, because if he is Lumberry on my Registeel's T-Wave, he's able to SD twice or get off 2+2 hits, whichever is more favorable for him in the situation. Anyways, let's just get into the game. As you can see, there's no Hitmonchan, so... Did I say Hitmonchan a bunch of times? This is not Hitmonchan, bro. That's Hitmontop. I'm an absolute noob. Anyways, let me grab some water real quick. Alright, so what else did you not bring? No Altaria, which was a little bit surprising because while there is a Registeel and a Crobat, it is able to muscle through at least the Registeel potentially using some smart prep. But yeah, the Crobat is a pretty hard check to it, so I do understand the bench. Alright, so the Cofagrigus. I didn't actually see this in mocks at all, so maybe one time, but I'm really not too worried about it. So I'm going to lead with my Crook into Mesprit, and I'm just going to knock here, predicting maybe he wants to trade rocks potentially. He's just going to die and is Iron Ball, not Citrus Berry. So Mesprit is dead. He probably figured if it's just max attack Crook, he's going to live, knock off anyways, and get up rocks. Maybe U-turn out. Probably rocks is the angle here, right? But yeah, the Iron Ball did not work out for some reason. It was probably Trick trying to catch either my... No, it's definitely trying to catch my Rotom, right? And then Landorus Earth Power looks better. That's probably the reason why, but obviously did not work out for him. Greninja comes in, forces me out. I go into Rotom Wash as they double into Landorus. Really weird play because Rotom Wash covers both of them. Goes for Sludge Wave, as I miss my Hydro Pump. But this is fine because I can just Pain Split the next turn. He goes for Calm Mind. This is fine. I can Hydro Pump and then it'll be in range of my Serperior, no problem. But then I get crits, and all of a sudden this is looking quite sad. Because the thing is, Crobat is faster, but doesn't kill from this range. And then everything else on my team is slower than Landorus. So I do kind of need to deal with this with my Serperior. And I am able to 2-hit KO with Sludge or Leaf Storm and then take a Sludge Wave. So I do force it out. I go for the Hidden Power Ice to not miss. Me being at +4 is not really that impactful here, so HP Ice is just a safe play. Also hit Scolipede a little bit harder, and here I go for Glare, and he has Lumberry, so he burns the Lum pretty early, and I dodge a Rock Slide. So I call that justice for getting crit, so let's call it even now. Go into my Registeel because I don't expect to SD from this position at all, and so I get my Registeel in. He goes for Superpower. I felt like Megahorn, Earthquake, Rock Slide was just superior coverage no matter what into my team, but decided to go for Superpower. This is probably to cover the Registeel and the Crocodile in one slot and not rely on Megahorn misses, but I don't think it was the better set overall. Sometimes you just have to bring the better set even if it has inaccurate moves, and Sablo did not go for that in this matchup, so... Kind of sad for him to be superpowering and doing 19% to Registeel, but he is getting chip on me, which is a little bit impactful for the Gren, but really Registeel in this match was only really there for the Scolipede, as the Altaria did not come. I just realized I'm not in my nice overlay, what the hell, why didn't anyone tell me? Anyways, Registeel is pretty useless here, so I'm just going to sack it to the Lando, but he does switch out, predicting my Crobat or something like that. Maybe he predicted the Serperior sack and wanted to get up, or get his Gren in offensive position or something. I don't really know what the Gren swap was supposed to accomplish. I know he said he was trying to catch my Serperior sack after the game, at least I think I remember that. I don't know what... Oh right, it's a Power Punch Gren. That's why that makes sense, because if the Serperior comes in on the sack versus Landorus, you can Power Punch, and then +1 Gren is like more scary than a +0 Gren. Yeah, here it is. But like, come on, man. I just go for a T-Wave. And now this thing is neutered. I know a low kick is coming out. so I go into my Gardevoir. If he gunk shots there, that's like an absolute demon play, and it just didn't happen. You know what I mean? Goes for Water Shuriken. Like only 2 hits, does not really matter. My Gardevoir is now in range of Sludge Wave, so any chip is enough for him. And now I'm just going to sack my Registeel here. I know that my Superior can win the game, even though it is at 11%, so I'm going to sack off my Registeel rather than the Superior. Go to my Superior, get off the +2 here, and now Empoleon does live, but he goes into Fagrigus, trying to get off a Trick Room, I'm guessing, because he does just drop, so definitely not like Spidef or anything. So, and then Leaf Storm is going to do 77 to Empoleon, and he's not going to be able to win this endgame at all. I go into my Crook to finish it off, I believe. Just go for a knockoff or Earthquake, whatever. And so now we are 1-1, and BKC style, I am going to take a bathroom break real quick, so I'll be right back. Alright, we are so back. Alright. Next matchup, right? So next I play against Rob Jr. This guy is the GOAT, and there is another Mega Altaria. Mew is actually quite problematic for my team, just because Wisp taunt sets are so great into, you know, Registeel, and everything else, like Crocodile doesn't want to get burned. So there is that option, as well as Spidef. Mew is able to take 2 Hyper Voices if I am Timid Gardevoir, so there is that as well. Greninja, again, a great offensive threat versus me. Zapdos, maybe it's pretty good, right? It can kind of switch into Superior pretty free. Crobat is free as well. Crook, it can 1v1 as well. So Zapdos and Mew kind of form a pretty solid defensive core that's hard for me to break. Gran is great offensively. Another Empoleon, so a lot of same Pokemon. And then Donphan for like Rock, Spin, whatever. So how did I approach this matchup? Let's see. So I do have just Offensive Guard with a Heal Bell last. The reason for this Heal Bell is because Wisp Mew was causing quite a few issues in mocks, as well as like stuff like Discharge or T-Wave, Zapdos, Scald, Empoleon. There's lots of ways for him to get status on me, so I figured Heal Bell was nice. Even if I never click it, I don't really need more coverage, you know. Dual Stab T-Will is enough versus the whole team. Then there's Superior, which I decided to go for Subseed. This is kind of designed to weaken the Zapdos, kind of early game, stuff like that. I'm able to 1v1 things like the Empoleon, yeah. So as Altaria if it's not Hyper Voice, which I really don't expect Hyper Voice this game at all. Crobat here is just defensive, toxic, defog. So this is able to beat non-refresh Altarias, which is really nice. As well as just toxic the Zapdos. That's the main reason I have toxic. Rotom Wash is Spadef, pretty standard. Thunderbolt here, again, I wanted to be able to stay on the Empoleon, same reasons before, as well as T-Bolt will Oko Gren after Rocks guaranteed. Maybe not guaranteed because I don't know his spread, but offensive Gren, it'll die to T-Bolt, you know, that's why I have the set. Registeel is some mixed defense with some speed. I don't really remember what exactly the speed is for. Probably Donphan, right? Just outspeeding a slower Donphan is nice. Stealth Rock, Toxic, you know. This team had multiple Toxic users because I do want to catch that Zapdos if I can, get it on a timer. And then Choice Banded Buffalon. Now this was kind of the wild card and the reason why I was winning a lot of mocks. So leading off with Choice Banded Buffalon versus this team, there is no normal resist. Like, there is an Empoleon, there is a Trevenant, but Trevenant is not coming, don't fool yourself. And then Empoleon dies to 2 head charges, so in reality he has no normal resist. So if I'm able to get a favorable matchup turn 1 and just click head charge, I'm already starting off at a huge advantage. Stuff like Zapdos will die from full. It's like super crazy how strong this thing is. So I really wanted to bring the Banded Buffalon here. What did I bench? I think I benched Crook. Yeah, no Crook here. So Buffalon is my lead, and my play versus Empoleon is to Wild Charge, versus everything else is to Head Charge, and versus Mew it is to Facade. Now we decided this going into the battle that Facade is going to be the Click versus Mew lead because Wisp is so likely that I really do have to play around it, you know what I mean? And if it's Mew in front of a Buffalon and you do have Wisp, you're definitely going to click it, right? The other option is like sacking a Pokemon, which, yeah. So that's why Adamant Choice Band, and then I have enough speed for slower Empoleons, if I remember correctly. Alright, so here we have the game. And yeah, so as you can see, there is no Trevenant. And what else did you not bring? The Muck. Yeah, no Muck. So here I lead with my Buffalon as Mew comes out, and I'm going to click Facade for the reasons I said before, but it turns out this Mew is just going to U-turn out, go into a Helmet Donphan. Now the thing is, Head Charge is more than double the base power of Facade, so if I did Head Charge, sure I'd take Helmet and a lot of recoil, but this Donphan would be dead and I'd be able to play with no rocks this whole game, which would have been so massive, but what can you do, right? The play is still correct, I feel like. I stand by that Facade play. Crobat comes in, I'm able to defog here, and I believe I just go for a Toxic on this Zapdos. I really want this thing on a timer. As he goes for T-Bolt, and I'm thinking, okay, T-Bolt, that's nice, no discharge, so I don't really have to play around Para that much. It's probably going to be T-Bolt, Heat Wave for my Registeel, and maybe Hidden Power Ice, or something like that. Maybe just a Hidden Power for something here. Would it be that? Let's look at it. Yeah, so T-Bolt, Heat Wave, and then Hidden Power Ice for the Crocodile would make sense. So I'm thinking I can just roost on this thing, and Toxic will do its job. I just need to dodge the 10% Paras. But here he reveals T-Wave. So I'm like, okay, so it's probably no Heat Wave then. But this is a pretty big deal. I do want to get a Heal Bell off with my Guard ASAP if possible. But the main problem with that is Guard kind of just wants to click attacks here. With Buffalon already weakened, I don't really have another great breaker necessarily, so that kind of is on guard. So it's really hard to click 2 buttons at the same turn, so yeah, it is kind of rough. Zapdos also reveals U-turn, so I was not expecting U-turn at all. I expected Roost and a coverage move here. But U-turn is like pretty unlucky here. Not unlucky, but like unfortunate for me. Mew comes in, and I'm going to go into my Registeel. From the U-turn damage before and from the Seed Bomb, we know this is a attack invested Mew, so it's probably going to be 4 attacks Assault Vest, which is a set that makes sense into Gardevoir. It's able to take 2 Hyper Voices and threaten with Gunk Shot with the Oko, as well as just generally do some nice damage to my team. The thing about that is, right, Gunk Shot and then what? You need a move for Crobat almost certainly. So it is walled by Registeel or by Crobat, and so I can find that out by going Registeel and getting up my rocks. There's no taunt possible here, so I'm just going to rock up. Or do I Toxic? I'm so good. I Toxic the Donphan coming in. Shout out. Because I know I'm probably going to have to defog anyways later. So I get my Superior in, and I believe this is a sub turn. Because with the Toxic on Zapdos... No, I actually Leaf Storm. Okay. Safe play. But with the Toxic on Zapdos, he does have U-turn, so I can't really sub-seed it. But I can sub, force it to U-turn out, and preserve some HP on my Superior, basically. I could have HP Iced there, would have left the Zapdos pretty low, but the U-turn actually does pretty sizable damage to my Superior, and I didn't want it to be in range of Gren afterwards. Being at 82% after leftovers means Greninja cannot kill me from that range, so I am able to get more chip off. So this Mew is now in range of Hyper Voice, and now the Gren does get its turn into Superior. I'm just going to sack it, because if it is not Specs, it has to Ice Beam to kill. So if he goes for Dark Pulse and kills me, I know it's Specs, so that's knowledge gained. And now that I know it's Specs, I don't have to fear like a Gunk Shot into my Gardevoir, so I can just go into Guard. And here I figure Greninja and likely Switch Empoleon is both covered by T-Bolt, so that's what I'm going to click. Unfortunately, I get the Para on Mew, which is going to synchronize back, and now my biggest offensive piece is paralyzed, which is like so bad, right? I cannot explain to you how bad this is, especially if you look at something like the Altaria. The Altaria, because my Registeel set is the way it is, I don't have T-Wave on this thing, so if it is Heal Bell on the Altaria, it can just wall my Registeel, and I knew this going in, but I figured it's not going to be DD and Refresh, and be able to 1v1 like Crobat and Registeel long term, right? You're going to run out of Roost eventually, and Return is not a good solo option into my team. So for that reason, I figured it can't be DD plus Refresh, so if it is Refresh, it can beat my Registeel, but it can't outspeed my Gardevoir. And if it is DD, it's going to outspeed my Gardevoir, but it can't clear the Toxic from my Registeel. So that was the idea of prep going in, but now that doesn't work anymore. So unlucky. I would have swapped out either way, but being parried is so annoying. So basically, at this point, I'm really trying to position my guard into something like a Zapdos to get a Heal Bell off later, because I don't really Heal Bell versus anything else. So that is really rough. Get up my rocks here. The Donphan I don't believe is actually Spin this matchup. I believe it is, yeah, Roar, and then probably Earthquake, and then Knockoff or Ice Shard, something like that. Does he go for Knockoff here? Seed Bomb. That was his last move. Okay. So Seed Bomb, Earthquake, Roar. If you have rocks up, it is pretty decent to just roar the Crobat coming in on rocks, so I do understand the set. Now Mew is going to be sacked off to rocks as I get a little bit of leftovers recovery, but now the Altaria comes in, right? No, the Gren comes in to collect. And as you can see, my Dark Resist is nothing here. So that's the downside of not bringing Crook. Dark Pulse is free, but also bringing Crook as a Greninja switch in is really copium anyways. So yeah, kind of rough either way you slice it. I go to my Registeel, pick up a KO with Seismic Toss as the Donphan is sacked, and now the Empoleon comes in. Now the thing is, I really need HP on this Registeel quite desperately because of the looming threat of the Greninja and the Altaria in the back. So I can't stay in here, I have to go Bouffalant, and he goes for Swords Dance. I can Wild Charge here, which will Oko the Empoleon, and Zapdos comes in and dies, I believe. Yeah, so Bouffalant did pick up a KO, but it was quite late into the game. Not really what I wanted out of it. Now Altaria comes in, and I go into my Registeel. At this point, I have to hope basically that his Altaria loses to my Registeel. I don't really have another play. But he has Fire Blast here and is able to 2-hit KO me. I just go for the Seismic Toss, predicting him to switch out of a Toxic. At this point, I do kind of have to make offensive plays because the Empoleon is not really checked long term by me. For example, the Bouffalant has to take rocks and like maybe even an attack coming in on the Empoleon, and then my Rotom's at 31%. So unless I'm able to get off a Pain Split, I'm really not looking good into that Empoleon, especially because it's SD. Could potentially be faster than my Rotom, so I did make that play. It didn't work out, unlucky. And then Gardevoir is going to die to frustration, and I'm going to get swept by Altaria. So if I didn't have that para, I would be able to go Gardevoir and Hyper Voice. The Empoleon is SD, so it might even be offensive, which means T-Bolt is a potential 2-hit KO on that thing. So if I do get one prediction right, or even if I don't, if I just keep hyper voicing it like 2 times until it's in T-Bolt range, my Gardevoir is in like really solid position to just win. The only problem is Greninja, right? And I do have things like my Registeel, which is able to kind of trade into that semi efficiently. Like, it's not great obviously, but if I get a Toxic off on it, then Seismic Toss, something like that, it is still winnable. But yeah, it was not meant to be. And we go into the next game, which is against Aki. Now, I'll be honest, this matchup was really, really fantastic for me. It's really impossible for me to lose this one. The reason being, if you look at T-Spikes plus Mischievous, he has no counterplay at all. So the thing was, with this matchup, I basically posted my paste in my prep channel in my team server, and I said, build while you have my paste open and see if you can beat my build. Nobody beat this build. So that's why I'm saying it's pretty much an unlosable matchup. T-Spikes, Sash, Roserade. Just that lead gets T-Spikes up, and Mischievous is able to keep them up by denying the Starmie Rapid Spin. There's no defog on this team, and there is a Mega Pinsir. So if I'm able to get Rocks and a T-Spike, or even Rocks, a T-Spike, and a Spike, because Roserade is carrying both Spikes this game, then I can really just cruise to a win. There's really not much he can do. I did have another version of this team that actually didn't have Roserade on it. I actually had triple Scarf with Latias, Manaphy, and Crook all being Scarf this game, because if you look at his speed tiers, they are so fast. So I figured to get the best out of like something like Manaphy, it has to be Scarf. Scarf Ice Beam is like pretty strong versus a lot of these guys. Energy Ball and Surf also very strong. So yeah, Scarf Crook as well is really, really great here. I am Moxie this matchup, I believe. No, I'm Intimidate. I was Moxie for a few mocks at least. But Intimidate I decided to go with because of Victini and the Pinsir. So there is that, as well as the Garchomp, right? I can Intimidate all 3 of those and it's impactful, so that's nice. Maybe I didn't have Moxie this matchup, maybe I'm mixing that up. But yeah, so I decided to bench Manaphy here, I believe. Yes, so no Manaphy, because it's just so slow without Scarf, and I had Crook for Scarf, so it's really not a big deal. And then Latias is actually choice Specs on this team. Oh wait, no, the triple Scarf was not Scarf Latias, it was Specs Latias and Scarf Mischievous, which was super funny with Power Gem to snipe the Pinsir. It was very funny. And like there's no Shadow Ball resist or even Hex, so that's why it was so funny to me. But that team also went nearly undefeated. Darkrai was able to beat it with some hacks, but you know, we went with the other team version. So this is Rest Talk Mischievous with enough defense to take Life Orb Psyshocks from the Starmie. So there's stuff like that. Shadow Ball and Hex, because there's no Ghost Resist, it gives me a higher chance to pull a Ghost move with my Sleep Talk, as well as Hex just being a strong move in conjunction with T-Spikes, which I know almost guaranteed are going up this game, and they're going to stay up. So Spikes, HP Fire, Sludge Bomb, this is my lead. I decided to go Max Defense, just because even though I am a lead Sash variant, if he leads Victini, great, I need the Sash, right? If he leads Pinsir, I was actually going to switch into Steelix versus lead Pinsir because of fearing double hit, which is the only way he could possibly prevent T-Spikes from going up outside of like taunting with Cobalion or the Victini or the Thundurus, but that's like not a real play, I feel like. So being able to, you know, just set up Spikes versus the vast majority of team and then be max defense so that something like a knockoff Thundurus, I feel like physical Thundurus with Defiant is quite good in this matchup. So I know Aki isn't really the type to risk focus blasts that much, so I feel like it's probably going to be superpower. So being able to be physically defensive for those knock U-turns and stuff like that. Garchomp, you know, is great as well. And then if my sash is broken, I can still come in and set up on a Psyshock Starmie. You know, like take a Psyshock, get my T-Spikes back up if it is able to remove. Stuff like that. Yeah, so yeah, Specs Latias as well is like just incredible this game. Like the only psychic resist is Victini, which is taking rocks and T-Spikes, and then Starmie, which is walled by Misdreavus, and I do want that thing to come in on hazards if possible. Just chip it, and then Draco, obviously there's only Cobalion that resists it, which is terrible. Like I don't know how this team functions, but if you run into a dragon type you lose, I guess. I don't know. So Latias here is Sleep Talk for the Lilligant with 3 moves that all hit Lilligant super hard. Yeah, and then just standard Ice Punch Lopunny because he has a Garchomp. And then Steelix is like Impish with a Rocky Helmet. This is for the Mega Pinsir. And yeah, the team is pretty self-explanatory. Let's just get into the game. What did he bench? He benched what did he bench? Am I blind? I am so blind right now. Oh, there's no Starmie. Right. No Starmie and no Cobalion. So there's no Draco resist. There's no even potential for spin, so my Misdreavus is free to do whatever it wants. I don't need to preserve HP on it for the spin. I can go to this now. So Roserade versus Victini. I know he's not going to taunt here. He's likely to V-Create or U-turn. This reveals Choice Banded and I get the poison point, so great turn for me, but it would have been poisoned anyways. Now Pinsir comes in. I do have a Steelix just for this. He goes for X-Scissor and doesn't Mega Evolve. I really don't understand that at all. I guess doesn't want to be 4 times weak to rocks when it comes in, but like then it's going to take a T-Spike. It's really whatever. So I get up rocks as Victini comes in. I do have a Roserade sack here. I don't need it anymore. T-Spikes are up, but he's no way to remove. It's done his job. So now I go into my Crook, threaten a Pursuit, but I am just going to Knock here. He doesn't really have a Knock switch in either way, so no matter what he does is good for me. So that's why I went for Knock rather than Pursuit. Pursuit could go wrong, Knock can't. You're able to 2-KO this Pinsir. Later he revealed Pinsir was the Stealth Rocker, so he has no rocks now. Lilligant comes in, but I do have my Latias specially prepared for this. Sleep Powder hits, but I do have Sleep Talk. I'm going to pull an Ice Beam here if I remember correctly, and just one-shot the Lilligant. Shout out to Latias, man. Now, the thing is, future sleeps are not guaranteed, so I go for Sleep Talk. The idea was I wanted to stay in until I woke up anyways. I don't mind taking a knockoff here, or even a U-turn. Super Fang does do some chip, but now I'm awake on my Latias. I'm able to come in later and just fire off a Draco for a free KO, or even a Psychic at this point. So now, my Steelix, because the Pinsir is down, I don't really need it too much anymore. It's nice for the Thundurus, but I do have other ways of checking the Thundurus, so I'm really not too worried. I go for a Dragon Tail, just forcing more Hazard Chip. Garchomp is forced in, takes Poison, and then he switches out into Victini. I don't know what this was for, honestly. I just went for Earthquake because I don't need my Steelix anymore at all. But yeah. So now I go into Misdreavus because at this point it's free, right? He's going to Earthquake 100%. Just from body language, you can read that. And now I can just get a free Shadow Ball or Hex. I go for Hex. This reveals Assault Vest Electros. I don't know if it already revealed that yet. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I don't even know. But now I go into my Lopunny because I know it's free. I am Limber, so before Mega Evolving, so I don't have to fear like a Discharge Parris or anything like that. I live any hit, and now I can just go for Return. I crit the Garchomp, didn't really matter. It is Helmet, but like at this point it doesn't matter my HP on my Lop. Scarf Thundurus is able to revenge me, but now I can just go into Latias and pick up the kill with Psychic. And I'm going to Psychic the Thundurus, and this is going to be the game. Alright, because he can knock off. Okay. And now my Crook comes in and just knocks off. I don't care if it's Defiant, because Knockoff will always kill even if he's like literally 252 defense. Like from this range it does not matter. That's the power of Adamant Crook there. So we do defeat Aki in a very, very favorable matchup for me. Nothing he could really do, I'll be honest. Alright. So now we go against Jake. Now this is a very scary matchup. It's kind of similar to that week 1 matchup that I played versus Chipboard. The Landorus, Scizor, and the Seismitoad are the same, but the Sneasel is now a Weavile. So I do have to prep a little bit harder for that. And then Gallade is like the biggest threat of all time versus my team, which is so sad. Snorlax as well is able to check things like the Manaphy and the Latios quite efficiently, and then Clefairy is actually quite annoying for me to take down. Fortunately, Electivire is not a real Pokemon, so I don't have to worry about that too hard, but the other 7 can all come pretty reasonably, and it's kind of hard for me to deal with. Let's see. I just have Healing Wish, Lopunny, plus this Max Defense, Tail Glow, Acid Armor, Manaphy. So the reason I decided to build around Manaphy this matchup is because if you look at it, he has only physical attackers. Like Lando, Weavile, Scizor, Gallade, and Snorlax. They're all only going to be physical, right? And this is likely by design to power up Weavile's beat up. So it does make sense in that regard. From a drafting perspective, but what it does allow me to do is run Max Defense, Acid Armor on my Manaphy. And if I'm able to get up a Acid Armor, there's nothing really that breaks me. So I'm able to trade very, very favorably HP-wise into pretty much anything with Scald Energy Ball, as well as Tail Glow just to be able to break through the Clefairy. And then Healing Wish to bring it back was like super, super dominant in Mox. There's like almost no counterplay outside of like Encore on Gallade, and that's pretty much it, right? And then I did want to avoid T-Wave versus the Clef if possible, but I knew taking the T-Wave was not the end of the world. Then Scarf Crook with Moxie, this was a great win condition. The Dark Resists are pretty lacking. If you look at it, it's only Clefairy and Weavile. Weavile's not a long-term switch-in. Landorus does kind of check Crook quite well, which is why I do have Foul Play on this set. Is able to 2-hit KO offensive Landorus quite easily. And yeah. So Roserade is going to be Rocky Helmet Max Defense. The reason for this is because of Scizor and Landorus, right? If I'm able to switch in on Landorus U-turns, which I think U-turn is a pretty obvious click versus a lot of Pokemon here, versus Crook and Latios, it's very easy to click U-turn, so being able to Poison Point it potentially. I actually don't have Poison Point, but like Rocky Helmet still. And then T-Spike Spikes, again, this team only has Defog Scizor, so I was trying to punish that by just setting up hazards with my Roserade and then kind of punishing the Defog if possible. And then, yeah, if I can get a T-Spike against Gallade, that is such a big deal. Yeah, and then Giga Drain, HP Fire, just decent 2-move coverage. And then Steelix is Rocky Helmet, very defensive, with Heavy Slam, Fire Fang, Roar, Stealth Rock. This is going to be my Steelix, or not my Steelix, my Snorlax check. So being able to Rocky Helmet that thing down, as well as it's a nice check to Scizor and Weavile. So the physical defense on Steelix is very important here. Stealth Rocks are important, and then Fire Fang for Scizor, Heavy Slam, just general move, and then Roar. The only thing is the Snorlax does kind of wall Heavy Slam Fire Fang, so Roar plus Hazards is like the only way that I really beat it alongside of Rocky Helmet, so that's why I have Electros here. So Electros is also Max Defense Helmet. This is also designed to ease the Snorlax matchup with Dragon Tail for a Curse, Super Fang to just bring it to half immediately, and Drain Punch to like maintain my HP. I don't have any stab on this thing, but that's okay. Super Fang is all I really need to like chip his team. I think that's the whole team, so let's get into the game. Alright, so as you can see, there is no Weavile. So that's good for me. In Mox it was quite annoying with beat up to get around my helmets and chip the Steelix very easy, but yeah. So what do I lead with? So I lead with my Roserade into Scizor. I am Max Defense Helmet, so I can really stay in on this for free and get a T-Spike, I think. Yeah, I get up a T-Spike and I can spike up versus Snorlax, but I actually go into Electros, scouting for like a Choice Banded Snorlax or something like that, which was bringable here. And Electros is able to get off a helmet hit and Super Fang here. So Super Fang plus T-Spike into Seismitoad, immediately this thing is almost dead, and this is an opportunity for me to go into Roserade and get up a spike here. So I do kind of have a hazard advantage here. I'm able to stay in an HP fire into the Scizor, but it is faster than me. Did I reveal that turn 1? Yes, it did. So it is Scarf Scizor. I remember, if you remember, in the first game versus Chipboard, I knew the Scizor was going to be Akka on that one, but I knew it could also be Scarf. So this is the opposite way. So this game, Scarf Scizor was brought. I didn't bring Latios, so there is that, but Scarf Scizor that's what it was for. As well as Scarf Scizor is faster than Adamant Lopunny potentially. I think I was Adamant Lopunny actually. Was I? Yeah, I was Adamant, but max speed. So if he was creeping a creep or something like that, I would be faster, but just Jolly max Scizor maybe it's faster. I don't know. I'd have to double check the math on that, but I'm not going to. Now my Eel is able to eat the knockoff from Landers and get off another Super Fang, but this Scizor being fast means that I can't really stay in, and at this point I valued the ground resist more than my 16% Roserade, so I do just sack my Roserade. The Rocky Helmet does put it into Spike's range, so the Scizor is dead, and I can knock it out with Fake Out here to get around the Scarf. He does switch out into Clefairy very smartly. I go into my Steelix here, because this is the best way for me to get rocks. It is real Seismic Toss, which is actually a pretty big wrench in my plan, because if it is Moonblast, T-Wave, Soft Boiled, and like something else, like Healing Wish or something like that, something non-Seismic Toss, then my Manaphy like turbo beats it 1v1. But with Seismic Toss, all of a sudden my Manaphy is taking 25% rather than like 13% from Moonblast, so which is a big deal, as well as versus Steelix is a huge deal. So I get up my rocks, and now the Encore comes out. I didn't expect Encore, obviously, but now my Steelix is weakened, but I do have rocks up. Electros is sacked to the Seismic Toss, and now I'm like, man, what am I supposed to do versus Seismic Toss Encore on this thing? I could go to Crook and knock it off, I guess, but then taking a Moonblast is like really tough. So I just decided to go to my Lopunny. I do live a Moonblast, and Return does a lot, so I have many opportunities to fish for a crit here. Basically, Return has more PP than Soft Boiled, and yeah, so he's basically at full now, so he's going to Seismic Toss, but it reveals he doesn't really have Moonblast or T-Wave or anything like that. So I'm able to just spam Return for a long time. If I get a crit here, he dies, and I have many turns to fish for it. So that's what I'm going to go for. Yeah, and he can't really switch into Return at this point. Lander's already weakened, Seismitoad is dead to hazards basically. So I'm just going for returns, just doing in like the 40s range, and yeah. Unfortunately, I get 0 crits this whole time. He's able to heal up back and Seismic Toss me down even further if I remember correctly. Now here, I switch out on my Steelix, right? Because I know the Soft Build is forced and he's going to be at 100% either way. And here I'm going to trade my Steelix for a Heavy Slam hit to put it into Lopunny range. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite put it into Lopunny range, but I'm going to go for it anyways. And he switches out because, you know, High Roll would kill, and he has a completely useless Seismitoad to sack. So there's that. But at this point, I'm down quite a bit. Landers comes out, revealing its Scarf. At this point, I don't really have an Earthquake switch in, so I have to go and sack my Lopunny, and then set up an Acid Armor here. So this is good. I'm getting the ball rolling with my Manaphy. He goes into Snorlax and actually takes the poison, so he was Thick Fat rather than Immunity. I think that's just a mistake, but he is able to Whirlwind me out, just barely. Funny thing, Custap activates, but he is Whirlwind, so minus priority. But now my Crook comes in, and because of poison, I'm not actually able to get up a Moxie boost. Not that it would really matter either way, but just saying. Now Foul Play comes out, but it is bulky Gallade, like super bulky. At this point, I basically have to hope that it's not Encore and get off a Iron Defense and then try to 1v1 the rest of his team, which is actually pretty possible with Manaphy being max defense and Acid Armor up, but he is Encore, and I'm just going to lose the game now. So I forfeit, and yeah, that's a little unlucky. I think up to this point we've been trading wins and losses, so unfortunate. I feel like I played this one okay. The only thing is like Encore really threw a wrench in my plans, and then yeah, Whirlwind Lax was able to deal with my Manaphy when I was able to get it set up. So it just kind of just went his way this game. Jake had been playing pretty well this entire season. So again, losing to a good player with a pretty good matchup into me, just because of that Gallade, honestly, is so good. I'm not going to say the matchup was unwinnable, obviously. Like, Manaphy looked so great in this matchup. And then, like, being able to run physically defensive on all of my guys is, like, pretty nice. I won most of my mocks, but in the real game, he ended up on top. It is what it is. Alright, let's go into the next one. This is week 6, I believe. Yeah. So, I'm up against my good pal Dougal, and this is against Band Chasers, which by far was the best season, or the best team in the season, for at least the regular season, you know, very dominant. So I played against Dougal, right? And I decided to bring this guard team again. So this team, if you look at it, Lucario is probably the biggest threat to my team. CC is able to, you know, just threaten everything. It's faster than a lot of my defensive pieces. And then E-Speed or Bullet Punch is like pretty strong into the rest of them. I do have Crobat, but the thing is, Crobat is very pressured to check the Garchomp in this game, as well as the Superior. And then I also need it to defog the T-Spikes from Drapion away. Crobat is super pressured this game, so it's really not able to stick around and check the Lucario very effectively. That was my experience in mocks and in the actual game as well. So there's that. Gardevoir here. What was I? I think I was just Wisp here. No, I wasn't Wisp. I was Shadow Ball, Heal Bell, Protect with Hyper Voice. So pretty offensive, timid. This is faster than what was it? Drapion. Yeah, faster than Drapion because I was already planning on creeping the Lucario, so I figured may as well be faster than the Drapion. And then Shadow Ball is for the Metagross, because if it's not AV or Super Spadef, it's just a solid 2 KO. And I did see some offensive Metagrosses, but mostly AV and Spadef. So there's that. I was Wisp for a long time versus matchup, but I got popped a few too many times by Lumberry on the Metagross, so I figured, you know, I'm just going to end up Shadow Balling it. It's super fine. Yeah, and then the bulk on the Gardevoir is 96 defense, 24 HP. This is so that I always live a Life Orb Adamant Bullet Punch after Rocks from the Lucario. And coincidentally, it also lives +2 E-Speed from non-Life Orb after Rocks. So that's like the power difference between Life Orb, Stab Move, and just normal E-Speed. So yeah, there's that. Superior is Lumberry, just in case the T-Spikes do stay up for an extended period of time, as well as like his own Superior's Glare. I wanted to be able to guard against that somewhat. Pretty bulky here, not super strong, and pretty fast. So I wanted to be faster than the Garchomp at least. I didn't really feel the need to go for the speed tie this matchup, but faster than Garchomp was a necessity. Being bulky like this, I'm able to kind of Leaf Storm through the whole team. I am able to brute force into the Drapion if I need to, just with Leaf Storm, HP Ground. With the bulk, I'm able to live Poison Jabs pretty comfortably, a Lumberry in case I get poisoned. You know, a few games in mocks I was able to just brute force through the Drapion with my Superior and then defog later, because they always run T-Spikes in this matchup. Crook with Scarf Moxie, pretty standard sets. The Dark Resists are pretty lacking on this team. Especially because Metagross wants to come in on the Gardevoir, so I can double out, get my Crook in for an attack, and then he can't really sack HP on Metagross. That's like a complete losing play, so the only thing coming in on knockoff is really Lucario. If that's coming in early game, I'm really not too upset about that, because I do have some of my defensive pieces more healthy at that point, so I'm not really at risk of losing to an endgame Lucario sweep at that point. Scarf being faster than Arrow is really important. That's why I'm Jolly on this thing, because Arrow, if it is just random max speed, I do want to be able to outpace that. Adamant Arrow would be outsped by Adamant Crook, and he can run Adamant this matchup, but I just want to be safe. And then physically defensive Helmet Crobat with Toxic, Defog, Brave Bird. Now this is with Rocky Helmet defense is designed to keep rocks off versus a non-psychic stab Metagross, which is something that I saw quite a bit is Spadef, Rocks, Metagross, as well as I can defog away the T-Spikes Drapion quite effortlessly as well. So there's that, as well as the defense helps into Lucario E-Speeds, Garchomp hits, you know, stuff like that. Physically defensive Crobat is just the GOAT in this matchup. Rocky Helmet is a great item, and then Toxic is really good here. And then another standard Rotom Wash, just physically defensive this time. Nothing to be said here, it's just a good Pokemon. And then physically defensive Registeel as well. I'm able to take a CC and get off a T-Wave into the Lucario, which is really impactful. And then Seismic Toss, Ice Punch. Ice Punch is for the Garchomp. It'll 2-hit KO most of the time. And then Seismic Toss for everything else. T-Wave plus Seismic Toss is like pretty strong. Yeah, so let's look into the game here. Alright, so as you can see there's no Superior, and there is no, what is it, Baby Reuniclus, Duosion. So yeah. So I lead off with my Rotom Wash. It's a great lead versus everything. Drapion leads off. It is actually going to knock off my Rotom as I Volt Switch. And here I'm like, okay, I can actually just go into my Gardevoir because I'm timid. He reveals max HP here. So I figured it's probably going to be max HP, max speed, because the knockoff did so little. Or either that or it's Fizz Def for some reason to take an Earthquake from Crook after a knockoff to get rid of the balloon, something like that, something silly. But I figured it's probably going to be max speed, but the thing is, if I bring in my Gardevoir, it's actually kind of incentivizing him to not T-Spike, because he might just think, oh, I want to get Poison Jab damage off on this Gardevoir, which obviously would be great for him, but it would mean no T-Spikes up, which means my Crobat is not forced to defog. I can save the HP on it for the Garchomp or the Lucario, and that's something that I had a lot of trouble with in Mox, is maintaining Crobat for the appropriate threats. Like, taking chip on it early is like super hard to manage. So I went Gardevoir. Just in case I'm faster, I would avoid both options, but he is actually going to be max speed. You know, I kind of knew that going in, but the T-Spikes do go up, so I force him to choose that, and that means I do want to get a defog with my Crobat ASAP. So that's what I go to. He gets a Mash Raise frame 1, which is unfortunate. It means I do have to sack my Crobat for T-Spikes removal. Otherwise I would be able to restall this down, because Rocky Helmet would do its job, but unfortunate. And now I have to sack HP on my Crook as well, because the Bullet Punch is quite threatening to everything. But this does means I get +1, and I am Scarf, so I'm just going to take this into the Garchomp. He has Life Orb, but knocking off the Life Orb means I do live. I'm able to trade my Crook for the Garchomp, which is a pretty favorable trade for me, I think. The main problem is now Lucario doesn't have a Scarfer that's faster, right? E-Speed is pretty strong into my Superior and Gardevoir, so I can't really let it set up multiple times. Like, 1 SD is already bad enough, but 2 SDs would be game losing. So I go to my Gardevoir, just because if he goes Rotom or Lucario, I'm able to just Hyper Voice either of them, and it's super good for me. But he goes to Arrow, good on him, and he's able to go for his Stone Edge. I go to my Registeel. I'm able to take basically nothing from that either way, but he does go for Taunt, so I can't really trade Rocks here. He has Rock's Arrow, which is a good bring because Crobat can't defog versus this, and that's my only defogger, so it's really heads up by him. Earthquake does 41, but if you look at his set here, he doesn't have Roost. He revealed all 4 moves, so I'm able to kind of like trade my Registeel for this. Now Taunt wears off. This is important. I figure if he taunts here and I Seismic Toss, he lost his Arrow for like pretty much nothing, so I'm going to T-Wave expecting an Earthquake to come out. He does an Earthquake. He goes into Lucario and burns a Lumberry immediately. And this is actually like super good for me because I can T-Wave again. And now this Lucario is slower than my Rotom, which is really important because now Rocks was definitely the wrong play here, by the way. The idea behind it was I wanted to limit Arrow Switching to just 1 more. But it was totally not worth it. I should have just Seismic Tossed and put this Lucario in Rotom range. Because as you're going to see, even at -1, my Hydro Pump is not going to be able to one-shot this Lucario, which is really sad to see, to be honest. So Rocks were definitely not worth it, but here I can go to my Guard. I am very, very favored to live E-Speed here. He revealed after the game he was not Bullet Punch. At this point I kind of had to bank on E-Speed over Bullet Punch, but he was E-Speed, confirmed to me after the match. He thought he won because you're going to see later, the Stone Edge misses, kind of salt in the wound, but Serperior had this end game no matter what. Rotom comes in, takes one, and T-bolts. Now from this, he sees that I'm no bulk on my Gardevoir because my investment is in defense. So you can see here, investing in defense on guard is actually super efficient if you're going for defensive roles, but he figured that I was no bulk guard and that E-speed kills, so he was kind of upset. But after talking it through, we kind of, I protect there to guard against Custap Berry. And then Gardevoir is able to win the game here. So able to defeat Dougal, which is pretty nice. And now last matchup of the regular season. At this point, we're in like a situation, my team, where if we win the week, we're guaranteed playoffs. And if we tie, we have to hope for other people to tie or lose. So we definitely wanted to win this match. So here we are, right? Another Mew. So again, I'm thinking it could be the Wisp version that was so worrisome in mocks the other time, but it could also just be Assault Vest because he could just watch the replay and see what Rob Jr. did and how it worked out so well. So honestly, most people in mocks actually brought Assault Vest after seeing that play out, and I think Astiv also brought something similar, so hive mind, I guess. Everyone just copies the GOAT Rob Jr. Infernape, likely going to be Scarf this matchup. I would be like super shocked if it wasn't Scarf. And then Weavile probably going to be Choice Banded or Life Orb because the damage boosting item is actually super impactful against Rotom and Registeel. Like the calcs are crazy. Skarm probably going to be specially defensive this game, just to deal with the Gardevoir a little bit better. The Nidoqueen I did expect to be Pyapa Berry again for the Gardevoir. And then Mega Sceptile was like a pretty decent mon. It's not the greatest of all time, right? But with things like SD Iron Tail for the Gardevoir, Leaf Blade, and Low Kick or Superpower or whatever it gets. I don't even remember what fighting move Sceptile gets, but it can definitely run it here. It can also run something like Outrage to pick off my Crobat. Special sets are also perfectly serviceable here. They just like kind of hardwalled by Registeel though. Lantern was pretty annoying for my own Rotom Wash, but not really for anything else. Crobat, I guess, but not really that big of a deal. And then Trevenant's not Cummings, don't kid yourself. So yeah, this team pretty scary offensively between like the Sheer Force Nido, Infernape, Weavile, pretty scary. So what did I decide to bring? I have Modest Gardevoir with Shadow Sneak. This is because a lot of times the Mew was like living on 10% or something, and I wanted to have a move to pick it off, as well as like something like Endure, Blaze, Salac Berry, Infernape, something like that. I wanted the priority because, you know, if you look at my team, it's pretty weak to an Infernape like that, especially because it's the only form of priority is Gardevoir, which is super funny. Yeah. But then outside of that, just Modest, Hyper Voice, Psychic. I'm actually pretty slow. I'm only creeping what Nidoqueen is likely to bring, like the very fastest it can reasonably bring. So I figured I'm probably going to be faster than Nidoqueen. This is a pre-Mega, by the way. So Nidoqueen I know is going to be pretty bulky, so pre-Mega I wanted to outspeed it. Some nice defense investment, probably for something. I forget exactly what. But yeah, just 4 attacks because Gardevoir, it's just an offensive beast here. T-Bolt for the Skarm, obviously, and then Hyper Voice for everything, and then Psychic for Nidoqueen. And, you know, Sneak used to be another move. I think it was called Mind or Heal Bell, but I never clicked it, so I figured Shadow Sneak is better. Scarf Serperior. This is going to be one of my main win cons. Basically playing this whole game to weaken Skarmory and Infernape in range of Leaf Storm, and then after that, there isn't really a whole lot of counterplay. Like the Sceptile can also 4 times resist, so it's not like the easiest thing in the world, but Leaf Storm is a pretty strong move, and I do have Dragon Pulse if I do want to predict the I keep saying the Sceptile coming in. So there's that. Crocodile is also Scarf, so I'm running double Scarf here with Outrage and Dragon Claw. Depending on how healthy the Sceptile is, I can always revenge it with a move of some kind, and I only really need a dual stab in this game anyways. Then Crobat is just going to be standard Black Sludge this time, because longevity on this thing was actually super valuable, especially into the Scarm, being able to recover 6 per turn. It's actually so impactful when you're going for these taunt turns, like Taunt Roost, and then just waiting for Brave Bird to self-KO it. Black Sludge is so impactful there. As well as just like taking Flare Blisses from Infernape, or like U-turns or something like that with rocks up. I do want to stay as healthy as possible, so that's why Black Sludge. I really wanted to put Toxic on this thing for like a setup Mew, but I was not able to. I was able to fit Taunt though, which is like good enough to prevent setup Mew. Rotom Wash, right? Helmet, max defense, pretty standard stuff. I've only really run standard Rotom Washes this whole season. And then Registeel, also Rocky Helmet, physically defensive. This is basically to trade favorably into Weavile, and then also I can trade, if I'm high enough HP, into Infernape, and I'm perfectly fine making that trade. Infernape is quite a big threat, so if I'm able to take a CC and Earthquake, he's at -1, he's taking a Helmet, it does plenty of damage. And I'm able to trade 1 for 1 for that. And this is all my Stealth Rock, also my Stealth Rocker Toxic user. The Toxic is for like a Calm Mind Mew, something like that. And let's just get into the game. Alright, so what did he bench? The Trevenant, obviously, and then, let's see, no Lantern. So that was really good for my Rotom Wash. So I'm just going to lead my Rotom Wash. And Nidoqueen leads off. I'm just going to Hydro Pump. He reveals to be faster than my Rotom. This is kind of the benchmark that my guard is creeping, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, I figured it's probably going to be faster than my Rotom. And I go into Crobat because if he stays in, it's going to Sludge Wave. And I can come in on that and potentially Defog. But here he makes a silly play. Mega Evolves in front of my Crobat and dies. Probably predicted the Defog, or just forgot about Mega Speed mechanics, but I will take that trade. Yeah. So Weavile comes in. I do kind of have to fear a Pursuit, but at this point, like, what am I going to do? Stay in on Weavile? No. So I just go to my Registeel. He reveals to be Life Orb here. Takes Rocky Helmet. Now here I know a Low Kick is coming. I could have been Light Metal to half the damage of Low Kick, but I didn't think of that until after the game. So that's why I made this play. Low Kick is just to get more Helmet, and then, because I knew my Registeel was in range, I didn't want to just die to Low Kick before getting up rocks. So that's why I basically decided to trade my Rotom HP for this Weavile. So now I'm up 6-4, but the Infernape is still a threat. With something like Scarf, Scarf Flare Blitz is looking quite dangerous here. But yeah, I'm able to deal with it no matter what. So I go into my Crocodile here, and the Skarmory comes in. I'm able to just go into my Rotom Wash. He can't kill me with Brave Bird, so I'm able to get off a Pain Split here. Now I'm perfectly fine. I don't actually Pain Split, I go for Hydro Pump. This was expecting the Nidoqueen to come in, pretty sure. And now I Pain Split, just to waste Tailwind turns, and now I can go for a Volt Switch, I believe. So my Rotom is dead to rocks, but I stalled out the Tailwind turns, and I got out of there into my Crocodile. Now here, he thought for a long time on this turn. He goes into Mew, and while he was thinking, I was also thinking, right? If Mew comes in, it's probably going to be Setup Mew, because he didn't bring it in up until this point. I mean, it could just be Spadef and he's saving it for guard, and that's why. But also, like, there's no other real setup threat on his team. So Mew being like Rock Polish or with Weakness Policy does make a lot of sense. So I'm just going to knock off. If it is Weakness Policy, offensive Mew or something like that, then it is actually in range of Shadow Sneak after a knock. As you can see, it does 89%. He does end up being Lumberry. This is to guard against like Rotom Wash, Toxic or Wisp, Registeel T-Wave or Toxic, Serp Glare. So it makes a lot of sense. But here I'm just going to sack my Rotom Wash. No use taking a hit on my Crook when I don't need to, and the HP is pretty valuable into, like a Flare Blitz if I need to like sack a few mons for recoil. So Gardevoir comes in, and I'm going to go for the Shadow Sneak, pick off this Mew, and bop. So now Nidoqueen is slower in range, even if it's Pyava Berry, so he's forced into Infernape. Goes for Flare Blitz, knocks me out, reveals Life Orb, so my Crobat is able to just win the game at this point. I don't have to fear Scarf Infernape, and Brave Bird twice is going to win the game. So that's the end of the regular season, and my team was able to make playoffs. So yeah, we actually have the second highest wins in the regular season at 30, but due to the way points worked out this season, we're actually 4th seed. So there is that. And here's my playoffs match versus Ace Trainer Josh. We played against Band Chasers. And so this is a rematch. You'll find the only difference is it's Josh playing instead of Dougal. And they do have a little bit different building styles and playing styles, so it's definitely not like a pure mirror matchup in that sense. But I already know he's going to look at the replay, see what didn't work out, and then fix a lot of the things on his team. So I do have to worry about that. I'm not going to bring the same team either. I'm going to go for a different concept. I decided to bring Trick Room Gardevoir with Wisp this time. I figured that if it is Lum Metagross, then cool, but the Wisp is super nice, just spammable into his team, and I brought Shadow Ball last time, so I didn't want to bring it again. Go for the other tech into Metagross. And Trick Room is actually super impactful here because a lot of his Pokemon that like stick around to the end game are super fast, right? Or, you know, there's something like Rotom or Lucario, which even if they're like really slow, they're not going to outslow Zero Speed Quiet Nature Guard. The only thing that's going to outslow me is the Metagross, because the Duocean is not coming, don't kid yourself. So if I'm able to take out the Metagross, all of a sudden Trick Room Guard endgame is looking really nice. And then I also have Scarf Superior. Now you're going to notice something pretty funny here. It's a Leaf Blade. Now I played a lot of mocks with Leaf Storm, but during this game I was actually out of town on vacation, kind of I went to the LA Regional with a bunch of friends as a spectator. It was a super fun experience, but I had to play this game on my phone, and for some reason Leaf Blade came in over Leaf Storm despite doing like a mock like 30 minutes before the game. I had Leaf Storm, so I really don't know what happened there. I must have like misclicked something, but yeah. So I do have Glare, knock off HP Ground, but the idea was Leaf Storm endgames are pretty simple to set up, because the grass resists are like Lucario super frail, Drapion not likely to stick around, Superior kind of frail-ish, not the bulkiest Pokemon, and then Gardevoir threatens the Metagross. So like it can't check both of them super reliably. I have the exact same Crobat set except a little bit slower, more defense. The reason for this is because I figured I'm going to use this versus Garchomp most likely, so I'd rather have the extra defense and just creep the Garchomp rather than creeping Superior, because if Superior stays on Crobat, then congrats, you outplayed me, you know what I mean? Crocodile, this time instead of Scarf, I am max defense leftovers with Intimidate. This is my Stealth Rocker because I'm benching the Registeel this time in favor of a Chople Bouffant. So just defensive Crook was performing quite well in mocks. Foul Play was pretty nice into SD Garchomp, stuff like that. And then like Aerodactyl as well. Rotom Wash, I decided to go for Choice Specs this matchup. With this investment, I'm able to one-shot Garchomp with HP Ice. Lucario will die to Hydro Pump, stuff like that. It's just a very strong Pokemon in general. As you can see, like, the only real switch in to Rotom that's safe is the Superior, which they didn't bring last time, fearing the Bouffant. Because Bouffant with Sap Sipper really shuts down Superior so hard. And as you can see in the match, they also bench Superior again. So yeah, there's that, and then Chople Bouffant is there basically to try to lure the Lucario. Superpower is able to knock it out, and then Facade is just in case I get statused. Pretty standard SD, very defensive here, a lot of defense EVs. So let's just look at the game real quick. Alright, so last time they led with Drapion and I led with Rotom Wash. This time it's a Rotom Wash Mirror, but I'm Specs with a little bit of speed, so I'm pretty confident I'm able to outspeed. And I'm actually synchronized on this Gardevoir because I figured most of the time in Rotom Mirror leads, he's going to click Wisp. That's like the most obvious play. Getting a status on Superior is very nice. And so going Gardevoir and synchronizing the burn back onto Rotom, I felt was worthwhile in a lot of mocks. So that's why I decided to go for that. Unfortunately, this means he's able to Volt into Arrow, so I get that call like quote-unquote wrong, but I mean, I did diffuse the Rotom situation, and now Gardevoir is not burned, so it's fine either way. The main problem with Rotom is that while I do have Superior, I really don't want it to get like T-waved or anything. Guard is the more expendable piece late game, so that's why my plan was to go Guard first. So Arrow comes in, sets up rocks, but I go into my Crocodile, which is max defense, and I'm able to trade rocks, but it is Aqua Tail, which is something they didn't have last time, so it's a good bring. But I am able to pivot into my Rotom Watch because of the Intimidate. It would have done like very little damage, and now I'm able to just Hydro Pump here, because Hydro Pump 2-hit KOs the Rotom from that range, and 2-hit KOs Garchomp, kills this, 2-hit KOs Metagross. So like Specs Pump, all I need to do is hit and I pick up a KO, and that's good for me. Now Drapion comes in, I'm just going to Hydro Pump this, I'm pretty sure. He knocks off my Specs, but this chip is like super impactful. I can just Volt Switch out. I go for T-Bolt, so I wanted my Rotom in actually, yeah. Because if I take another Rocks round, all of a sudden I'm in range of a lot of Pokemon, but at 59% with the defense investment I have, I'm able to take a Garchomp Dragon Claw. He'd have to Outrage to kill me, and then my Gardevoir can come in, or I can get a free Defog, you know, something like that. Metagross is slower and can't kill me at all. It actually doesn't threaten me in the slightest. I'm out of range of CC from Lucario, and Stone Edge does like 59 maximum. So I was actually 58 point something, I believe. So this is like a super favorable roll. He doesn't know my defense investment, but he crits the Stone Edge. Unlucky, what can you do? So here I actually had to think quite a bit because the T-Spikes are up, but I can't go Crobat here, obviously. So I'm thinking, what's the least number of Pokemon I can get poisoned before I can get the Defog off? So I figure Bouffalot is going to have to be poisoned and sacked here. So I take the Stone Edge and I go for a Facade because I am poisoned. It does quite a bit of damage, but he can't Roost on me because I'm clicking Superpower this turn. And this puts Arrow in range of Leaf Storm. So I go into Serperior's Super Telegraph Scarf. So he's going to switch out fearing the Scarf Leaf Storm, but that's when I click the Leaf Blade and I'm like, what is going on? So yeah, this was so sad to see. It's in playoffs too, like come on, man. So Metagross is able to come in on Leaf Blade, take no damage. It is leftovers. And I go into my Crobat, get the helmet off, and now I can Defog. They get another frame 1 mash raise. Just unlucky, but I am able to get the Defog off. Losing the rocks into Arrow is a little bit unlucky here, but I definitely need to Defog. It's not like an option here. I go into my Crocodile. I'm able to Foul Play because he has the boost and knock out this Metagross. And here the Arrow comes in. Now here I'm going to go Superior and threaten a Glare, right? Do I just Glare? I think I just Glare. Yeah, I Glare the Lucario, which is pretty nice. And then I go to my Crocodile. Here, I figure he's going to SD, because if I go hard Gardevoir on a CC, he just loses, like, on the spot, right? So I figure SD is coming, and my Crocodile can Intimidate and then take any priority hit and just go for an Earthquake. I mean, yeah, he would have gotten an E-Speed or a Bullet Punch off here, but I lived it pretty easily and knock it out with Earthquake, and the HP on my Crocodile does not matter at all. As you're going to see here, I'm going to sack my Superior just to get an Intimidate off. Now, I would have been able to do this at any range of HP on Crook, so really that pair does not matter at all. Here, I'm actually just going to Rock. Now, I know what you're thinking, right? Why not just Foul Play or knock off the Aerodactyl, trade it down? Why do you need Rocks here? Because Rocks only does 6% to Garchomp, right? And that's not the point. The point is, if you look at this Arrow set, right? Stone Edge, Aqua Tail. The last move almost certainly has to be Earthquake for my Registeel. So knowing that, I know that it's not Taunt. This is really, really important because Garchomp, if the Crook kills the Aerodactyl, then Garchomp comes in, even after Rocks. SD Garchomp +2, if it has any bulk at all, Foul Play will not kill and I will lose the game. So I cannot allow that to happen. So I'm just going to spam Rocks so that my Gardevoir can come in on this Aerodactyl, which I'm like 95% sure is not Taunt. And I can get up a Trick Room, and we're fine. So I can actually just Earthquake to cover the Garchomp switching in, while not killing the Arrow. So I actually end up dodging a bunch of Aqua Tails, but it doesn't make a difference at all. I'm just going to spam Earthquake. It is by far my best play. And now my Gardevoir comes in, gets the Trick Room off, and I'm able to one-shot everything on his team. If he crits me there, he crits me. You know, I can't play around everything. And Hyper Voice twice. I figured Roselli Garchomp is so rare into my team, I didn't even factor it in like this end game. I know it's going to be Lum for Rotom Wash, Helmet for something, you know. It's not going to be Roselli because he outspeeds Gardevoir anyways in his mind, and now the Hyper Voice is going to pick up the KO, and we win in playoffs despite bringing Leaf Blade on Superior. So very cursed, but we do end up with the win. And this was actually pretty funny because I was initially thinking Trick Room is not doing anything in Mox. Like, I haven't got a Trick Room off a single time in Mox, and I'm like, what do I replace it with, man? I'm just looking through the move pool, and I'm like, what do I want to bring? Do I want to bring Shadow Ball and Wisp or something like that? But then I decided just go in with Trick Room just in case endgame situation like this happened, and then it did happen exactly as I envisioned it when I built the team. So that was super nice. Unfortunately, the rest of my team went on to lose the semifinals against Band Chasers. Can't be too mad about it. We did get kind of unlucky in a few games. Obviously, it's 8 games of Pokemon, you're bound to get unlucky in some games, but it was pretty particularly bad in Aster's game, which would have brought us to tiebreak potentially, but you know, that's a whole nother world. Overall, I'm pretty happy with my performance in this DPL. I was able to go 5-3. After a lot of like very mid seasons in DPL, finally having like a better season is nice, as well as, you know, playing a lot of ORAS recently. I felt pretty comfortable in the tier after going like, what was it, 6-2 in ORAS and DCL, something like that. So another pretty decent, strong performance in ORAS under my belt. Pretty happy with how the season went. It was a great time with all my teammates, especially Aster. That guy's the GOAT. Like, super hard carry. Highly recommend to anyone who wants to draft someone in a team tour, you know what I mean? Truly my GOAT. Shout out to everyone else who helped, obviously. And that's pretty much going to wrap it up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.